Joining us on the specialties hotline is Mr. Scott Barker. Scott wears many hot hats in Section 5. He's the athletic director at Pittsford, and he is also the chairman for Section 5 football. Scott, welcome. Thanks for giving us a little time today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
So I think, Scott, the best place to start is at the beginning with practices starting on Monday. The state released guidelines for return to play several weeks ago. Section 5 got sign-offs from the health department. But maybe could you just give our listeners an overview of what the football season will look like? Spring football in Section 5, and it isn't college, it's high school.
Yeah, it'll look a lot different in some ways, but in many ways it'll look exactly the same. We have a March 1st start date on Monday. The challenge there will be that we are within a 2-week overlap of our winter sports. So football players will be sprinkling out from basketball, wrestling into football. Our first game block is the March 19th, 20th block. We are looking to play 6 regular season games. And after the 6th week, the top 4 teams in each classification will enter a semifinal. And our plan is to have a Section 5 champion at the end of the year.
How surprised, I told you 2 months ago this was going to happen. Would you have said, what would you put the odds at that at, Scott?
So 2 months ago, I would have had a little bit of belief. And the only reason I was saying that is because the outdoor sports went so well in the fall. So there was absolutely a difference with being outdoors, more space, socially distanced. Things are safer outdoors as according to the science. So when they approved the indoor winter high-risk sports along with football, I was pretty confident that we're at that point going to have a good season.
And it was a successful fall. No matter what anyone says, it was great. I mean, and I think that gave everyone the blueprint, right? And if you're playing an outdoor sport, I think we had Dr. Mendoza on a couple of weeks ago. Spring sports are probably going to be fine as long as everyone follows the guidelines. How impressed have you been with your colleagues in Section 5, especially Monroe County, on their diligence in making sure they had plans in place? Because you needed those to get going as fast as you did.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm impressed with my colleagues. I don't even know how to describe it. The day-to-day work that athletic directors are putting in right now, most of them are probably 14, 15-hour days. Someone said at our meeting earlier in the week that you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you think of something and you're writing it down. But I think the one thing that I've always known about our group is we have a passion for high school athletics and giving kids an opportunity. And we have collectively provided that for our student athletes this year. And we're really, really excited and happy about that.
Scott, what's it going to look like at the stadium? And the state recommended 2 spectators. How is per athlete? How is Section 5 going to be aligned with the state guidelines? Because I know those get passed down to different levels where they might not be the same every place across the board. But what in general, what will things look like?
I think in general, most football stadiums around Section 5 will be able to handle the 2 spectators for home and away teams. I think there are probably some facilities, maybe at some of the smaller schools, where potentially based on their capacity of seating, they may only allow home teams in. I am not aware of anybody right now that has said no spectators. So I think some sort of spectating will happen.
And how many teams have signed up to participate? Because I know you mentioned the multi-sport athletes. That can be a challenge in some schools. And also kind of the growth of 8-man football too. Do you have a breakdown in terms of 11-man and 8-man for us?
Yeah, so everybody has come back. Every team from last year will field a team this year. We currently have 3 teams that have moved from 11-man to 8-man. We have a couple other teams right now that have emailed me and said right now their numbers are on the border. So I think before we officially release where everybody is, there might be some fluctuation. But to be honest with you, I'm really excited that every single school that offers football is planning on offering an opportunity for kids.
What's the schedule look like? Is it federation style? How will that be determined?
Yeah, so we went to a federation style of football, so it's all by classification. Um, all of your games are within your classification. Now, some classifications have larger number of teams than others, but we will run those classification games. There will be 6. We have our power seeding point system in which we feel that we can accurately seed teams. The only challenge that we have this year is you have like a classification, let's say AA, for instance, that has 12 teams and not everybody plays each other. So that can be a challenge. But for the most part, I think our teams are just happy to be out there and have a championship to play for.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed is there's kind of a hard deadline to get the season done with May 2nd, and the last block of games is April 20th. So if you mentioned the game starting in the beginning, the first couple of weeks, but then I noticed that the first couple of weeks games start on Friday, but then there's a sliding scale where there's Thursday games on a week, Wednesday games, Tuesday games, and Monday games. Is that all to just meet the deadline and follow through? That's an interesting thing that's new. It's not going to be Friday night lights all the time.
No, and the feedback that we received from our football communities and schools was to maximize the schedule. And what you'll see is that we started the season with a 7-day game schedule as normal, and then we reduced down to 5 days rest between games. It was a way for us to get 6 games in, and it was a way for us to still hold a championship. And we feel that that balancing of 7 days and reducing down was appropriate. We also have to remember that with only 2 spectators per athlete, you're not going to have thousands of people at a Friday night football game. So what we learned from other sports is it's very easy to host a couple hundred people on a Thursday afternoon, no matter what the sport. So we weren't so caught up with the weekend because we knew the whole community couldn't come out.
And I'll just say the whole live streaming thing, I don't think it's going away. I think there'll always be some sort of light. It's one of those things where you have it and then you take it away. You're not gonna be able to take it away. So I think it's cool. I mean, I'm watching Monroe County basketball on my TV over my fireplace a couple nights ago. It's fantastic. Steve's like, it's like having a red zone channel or something, just bouncing around on YouTube.
Yeah, I've joked that it's having the center ice package, the NBA pass, and now we'll have the Section 5 ticket. And shout out to Varsity Media. They're doing a lot of that, and they're doing fantastic work.
Let me ask you about go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say they really are. And I just was talking to one of my wrestling coaches about that. And we've set the bar for live streaming, Jeff. And I agree with you. It's not going away. It'll probably be around for a while now.
Facilities and snow. Mother Nature's giving us a nice little respite here. And maybe by Monday there won't be snow on the ground. Who knows? But how much of a concern is that, keeping fields clear?
Yeah, it's a concern. It's one of the reasons that we moved our start date back a week. So we have officially 3 full weeks to get our practices and prep for games. You have schools that have turf that are plowing and their fields are available. You have some schools with turf that won't plow. And then of course you have the grass fields. What I've noticed around Section 5 is the willingness for neighboring schools to be hosting other teams for practices. And what I know right now is I'm not aware of any school that does not have a plan to start somehow on Monday, March 1st.
Yeah, now you mentioned 4 teams will qualify for sectionals in each classification. Is there going to be an opportunity for the teams that don't qualify for sectionals to play additional games?
So there's always that opportunity. Because each athletic director and athletic department can play past sectionals. Our goal is for everybody to play 7 games, so that if you're one of the 4, or if you're one of the teams that does not make sectionals, we will schedule you a game that blocks 7. I think in this year, we also have to be really conscious about the overlap. And a lot of schools are concerned about that, and rightly so. And what I've been talking to our coaches about is you also have to remember that spring sports didn't have a season last year. So we want to be conscious of those athletes also, that we are not dominating the first part of their season also. We are hoping with spring sports that if finals are canceled in regions, they will have a long period of time to play April, May, and June.
I know on the long list of research my colleague, Mr. Bradley did, he did have a question about recruiting and how, this will help, obviously, and how much did it hurt last fall not having it. I mean, if some kids missed the boat, missed the opportunity to get onto a college team because there was no fall season from New York, and do you think they can still find a spot?
Yeah, it's tough. I'll tell you, it's probably the biggest impact that football has had. When you speak to college coaches all over the country, I was talking with the Syracuse coach a couple of weeks ago, and I think they signed 14 players that had never been on campus before. So everything has been virtual. You were reliant on previous film from the year before, and really our seniors are where it's impacted. But I think for the most part that if a kid wants to play college football, working with their coaches, working with local colleges, there's places for them to still enroll and get on a team.
Wait a minute. Syracuse coaches, why would you be talking to them? Why don't you tell our listeners, that's pretty cool what your son is doing from, give us a little snapshot from lacrosse to football.
Yeah, my son Colby, who's at Ohio State on the lacrosse program, has been part of their program, is going to be a grad transfer next year. So he's going to punt for Syracuse. It was an opportunity that came up. He's had this in his plans for a long time, has been continuing to work out. And it just so happened that the punter at Syracuse declared for the NFL draft this past season, and there's an opening there. So yeah, we'll be a Syracuse Orange fans this year.
One of the reasons that Scott's perspective is so great, Jeff, right? He's a parent. He's been a football coach who had a punter, Adam Podlish, that played for him at Pittsburgh and went to the NFL, athletic director, and he just sees things on so many different levels. So with that in mind, Scott, putting all of those hats on at the same time, what is your biggest concern going into this season, this fall too? Because it is, as much as homework as you've done, it's still a little bit of a great unknown.
Yeah. I think my greatest concern is really just the unknown right now for the sport of football. But I don't have the anxiety or the concern that I had back in September starting fall sports. We've been through that. We've been through now winter indoor high-risk sports. We are not seeing transmission of the virus back and forth amongst athletes or athletics. So really, it's about just getting the kids and the coaches entering this football season kind of orientated to what needs to happen in COVID. And once they get going, I think we're going to be fine. Probably my biggest concern is the weather, the latest snow and having facilities available for the kids to play.
Yeah, no, uncontrollable. Can't control that.
Nope,
right?
cannot.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I know I actually had a conversation with somebody from Triple O Heating and Cooling about maybe they can get some sort of deal. They can start heating the fields in Section 5, all those turf fields like they do in Green Bay, right?
Right,
Hey,
right.
You never know. Live streaming and heating fields. Scott, we certainly appreciate your time and all your efforts for Section 5 football. We know it's going to be interesting, and it's certainly going to be fun to cover it again as we move forward in March and in April. So strange to say that. So thank you again, Scott.
And thank you guys for all your coverage and support of high school athletics.
Well done, Mr. Bradley. You got a good lead guest.
Hey, that's why it's the program. It's always fun.
We'll head to our first break. You're listening to the Congressman Ferris High School Sports Show, brought to you by Salvatore Pizza.